In this video, I'm going to show you how to print and assemble a print-at-home PDF pattern. I'm going to be using the Sorbetto tank by Seamwork, but the steps for doing this are universal for any PDF pattern. Let's talk materials before we get started. You're going to need a computer or a laptop that's connected to the internet. You're going to need a printer, inkjet or laser, doesn't matter which kind, printer paper. And then you're also going to need paper scissors and Scotch tape if you've got it. I have a trick of the trade I'm going to show you that requires Scotch tape, and then a ruler, any kind of ruler. You're only going to use it once. There are 3 optional materials: packing tape, a highlighter, because once the pattern's assembled, we'll talk about next steps for finding your size and cutting out your pattern. And then because I do a lot of printed home patterns, I bought myself a paper cutter. It makes the process a little bit faster. I got this on Amazon. Maybe I can link to this at the bottom of the video. And that's it. So go ahead and collect your supplies, pause the video if you need to, and then let's get started.
First thing we're going to do is go to seamwork.com to download our free pattern. Now, Seamwork does require that you provide an email address and create an account. It's free to do so, and then if you want to, you can become a paid member. But they don't do anything funny with your email, and if you want to opt out of emails, you always can. But in order to get their pretty nice library of free patterns, you will have to create an account. So you're going to go to sewing patterns once you're on their website, and it's nice to just use the magnifying glass to search for what you need. So you can either type in Handsy if you're doing the top, or you can type in Sorbetto, which obviously I've already searched for. And then you're going to click on the pattern image, and on the image page is going to give you a bunch of information, like fabric recommendations. It's also going to give you a size chart. It's kind of nice to figure out what size you are before you go ordering the pattern, and also before you go buying fabric too. So you can always click on your size chart first. Also, sometimes pattern companies split up the sizes just so it's not too complicated. They might have like 0 to 16 on one PDF and then like 16 to 30 on another PDF. So it's good to know that before you download anything. And then for the Sorbetto top, it also has a lot of versions. So version 1 is just the regular tank. And then they also have a longer tunic. And then they also have one with sleeves. So this is helpful to know which version you're going to make before you go downloading, because they have PDFs for each one. And they also have PDFs for all of them combined. So with all of that in mind, you're going to click on download Sorbetto top for free. Now, because I'm a member, it's autofilling my information, but if you're new to Seamwork, you're going to create your account here. And this is where you're going to provide first and last name, email address, and create a secure password. Make sure you click on I'm not a robot. I think it might have you do like a test, right? Click on all of the things with signs or something like that. But once you pass that, you're going to click on get your free download. And then what happens next is the same for everybody, whether you're a member or just creating a new account. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to sign in real quick. So I'm going to click get your free download. And then once you enter your email and click get your free download, everybody should see this page. Thanks for downloading. And you're going to go to your pattern library. I have a bunch of lovely patterns from Seamwork, but you're going to click on download underneath the top. Make sure you don't click on the image. It'll just take you back to the pattern page. So click on download. And since the Sorbetto top has a lot of variations, this is where we can look at some of the details and just download the PDF that we need. So obviously everybody's going to need the instruction booklet. So you can click on that. And then I'm going to just find the PDF for the version and size I'm going to make. I'm going to make a size 12, and I'm just going to do version 1. So 0 to 16 version 1 is what I need. But you can just pay attention to sizes 18 to 26. If it says all, that means it's all of the versions, but it's a lot of pages, and maybe you don't need all of them right now. So find the PDF that you need based on your size and the version that you're making. So this is the one I'm going to grab. And then you can go to your downloads folder, or if you have a little pop-down window, click on the pattern. We don't need the pattern instruction booklet just yet. So hopefully that took you to PDF, to Adobe Reader. And this 14-page PDF is the pattern. Once you print these out and assemble it, it should make like a large rolled pattern. But for right now, we're just going to print a test square, and every PDF pattern will have this test square. It might be in centimeters, it might be in inches. So you're going to go to your print window and make sure you click on either just current, or like you can type in page 1. We only need the first page where the test square is. It's usually page 1. The most important thing you want to do is check that your printer isn't going to change the size. You want to make sure actual size is selected, or like don't scale, no scaling or something like that. If you see fit or shrink or scale selected, just make sure it's actual size so your printer doesn't do any funny business. And then you also just want to make sure that it's print in grayscale. Everything is usually just black and white and gray, so save your color. And then you're going to click print, and then you're going to check that the test square is the correct size, that your printer didn't make any sizing adjustments. So here's my printed test square page. I'm going to use my clear plastic ruler to check that it's a 4x4 square, which means that my printer didn't change any of the sizing during the printing process. If everything was okay with your test square, then you're ready to print the rest of your pattern. So go back to your printing window, and we don't need page 1 anymore. So click on pages or whatever it looks like on your print window, and just do pages 2 to however many it is. For this, it's page 14. Before you click print, just double check that grayscale is selected and that actual size or no scaling or whatever it was is selected too. Just so that nothing has changed since the last time you printed. You'll click print, and then now we're going to talk about how to assemble this pattern.
So now that I have my pattern printed, make sure they're in ascending order, and we're going to start to trim this. We want to trim to the line that butts up against those gray triangles, but we don't need to trim everything. We want to leave some pieces of paper with this border so that we can overlap them and then tape them, line up the triangles, all that stuff. So you just have to decide which sides you're cutting. So I usually use number 1 as my starting point. So I don't cut anything off of number 1. I don't need to. And then looking at number 2, page number 2, typically I like to cut the top and the left. I don't know why, it's just how it always works out in my brain, but I don't need to cut the top off of 2 because nothing is getting adhered there. There aren't any triangles at the top. So I'm going to cut off just the left side, and that way, once this border is gone, it'll overlap piece number 1. I can line up those triangles. So basically, every piece of paper in the top row is only going to have the left side cut off. If you want to just follow along the same way, that's great, like as we're learning and figuring out what works best for us. So if you just have paper scissors, you could just cut a straight line along the left side. Notice that my number 2 is upside down, so yes, it looks like the right side, but when it's right side up, it's the left side. I'm going to use my paper cutter so you can see how it works. You know, it's not a perfect system. Cutting with scissors is definitely more precise. So if you're somebody who likes precision, go ahead and use scissors. What I'm going to do is just kind of eyeball that my black line is lined up with this slit in my paper cutter. I'll close it down, and then I have to press this orange thing, slide it down, and that actually was a pretty precise cut. You know, a little bit of it got left over here, but like whatever is cut off from one piece, there will be paper to overlap and to fill any gaps that accidentally get cut off. No big deal. You can make a pile with all of your scraps. Make sure you recycle those when you're done. So let's go ahead and cut the left sides for all of the pieces that go in the top row of the pattern. If you're doing Sorbetto, it's pages 1 through 5. If you're not doing Sorbetto, if you're doing something else, just look at your pattern, the papers for your pattern, and whenever you go across your patterns and whenever you don't see a triangle on the right side, we know that this pattern piece ends the row. So if you don't have the sorbetto, just find the first piece that doesn't have a triangle on the right, and that's the end of your first row. 1 through whatever it is for you, 1 through 5 if you're doing the sorbetto. Okay, so let's cut off the left side of all of the papers in row 1. Now we have all of our pieces from row 1 here, and then what we're going to do is start from the right, work our way left, and we're going to line up our triangles, and this is where we're going to need Scotch tape. So I like to take a small piece of Scotch tape, and I use Scotch tape because if I make a mistake with placement, it peels off pretty easily and it doesn't pull any paper with it. So we're going to line up our triangle, and then also, you know, just take a peek at the pattern lines, right? Make sure that those are lined up too. And I just put one piece of Scotch tape right over my triangle. That's it for now. Let's finish connecting all of our triangles across the top row. So here's 4 to 3. I'll move it down so you can see. Pattern lines match up pretty nicely. If, you know, your cuts weren't super precise, there might be like a black line overlap. That's totally fine. It's really okay. Patterns and sewing are very forgiving. And we also have to forgive ourselves too. So here's 3 to 2. All right, and then there's just a little bit of the top of this tank on page 1, and I'm usually a size 12, so I see that my number 12 is on page 1, so I'm gonna need to attach it. If you are doing a smaller size, like 0 through 10, you probably don't need to attach page 1. But if you wanna have a complete pattern, you know, obviously attach it. Okay, so row 1 is finished, and I'm not gonna tape anything else just yet. You'll see why when we get to the next few rows. So I'm going to move this out of the way, and then let's talk about the next row. Actually, I'm going to keep this a little bit in screen so we can see what we're going to do with this border that we left on row 1. So I said earlier that for all of my pieces except for row 1, I'm going to cut off the top and the bottom. Now notice for page 6, I don't have a triangle on the left, so I don't need to cut off this side. It's just an extra step that you can just cut off that you don't need to do. I shouldn't say cut off because that's confusing. But for all the other pieces like page 7, I'm going to cut off the top and the left. So for row 2, let's just take a minute to cut off the top and the left of all of our pieces. And then we'll talk about assembling it and then attaching it to row 1. For the sorbetto, it's 6 through 10. All of the rows are in 5s, patterns of 5. So again, just if you're not doing the sorbetto, find the next page that doesn't have a triangle on the right, and that's the end of row 2. So we have row 2 cut. And we're going to assemble these the same way we did row 1. So you need your Scotch tape again. And we're going to line up those triangles on the sides, the long edges, I should say, because there are a couple of sides. Just one little piece of Scotch tape at that triangle connection. Here's 9 to 8. And always taking a peek at the pattern pieces, do the lines for the pattern. Making sure. Now those things will move because obviously we haven't taped it thoroughly enough yet. Here's where I think I may have cut too much off of the triangle. Again, it's really okay. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Like clearly there's a gap there. Some of the triangle is missing, but it's really not a significant amount. It's not going to make a difference in the size of the pattern. Also, I'm noticing there isn't even pattern on page 7 really. There's nothing important on page 7, just some lines. All right, and here's 7 to 6. Move that up a little. Okay, all right. Here's where we're going to connect row 2 to row 1. I like to start in the center. So I'm going to start by connecting page 3 to page 8, and I'm just going to connect it at the triangle. Again, that's it. I'm only doing like a slight connection, nothing major, because if you start taping like crazy right now, if anything is slightly off, it can affect the whole rest of the pattern. So this is why I only tape at the triangle at this stage, so that as I'm connecting the other rows and pages, I can move things if needed. I don't want to be taped into a corner. All right, so this is a cool piece because it's got a lot of patterns on it, including a dart. So I've got my center, and then I'm just going to work to the sides. You can start to the right, then go to the left, whichever. So I'm gonna go to 4 to 9, and here's a part where like laying flat, the triangle isn't lined up. But because I've only taped here, this can kind of act as like a hinge, and I can move my pieces as needed to get them to line up. So I move 4 down a bit and 9 out a little bit, up and out a little bit. So now those can be taped, and eventually we're going to tape our 4 corners. Not right now, be patient. Here's 5 to 10. All right, and then let's go to the left. Everything's a little fragile at this point, so handle it carefully. Here's 2 to 7. Okay, and 6 to 1 doesn't seem super important because there's really nothing here, patterns here and patterns there, but for the sake of the video and cleanliness, I'll do 6 to 10. Okay, here's what we're going to do now. We're going to, I'm going to speed up the video, and we're going to cut the rest of the pattern pieces, the papers. For the sorbetto, there's only one more row, 11 through 14. If you're doing another pattern, just finish cutting your pattern pieces following that same cutting pattern. So if you're always taking off the top and the left, keep doing that, except if you want to, on the very first piece, don't cut the left off, just that way, so we have this really nice border on our finished pattern, pattern roll, I guess, pattern sheet. So I'm going to speed up the video and finish cutting my pattern pieces, top and left, except for the first one of each row. And then you can pause the video if you need to, and I'll meet you on the other side. All right, so let's attach the next row, or the last row. I'm going to start maybe on number 12, just somewhere in the center. There isn't a true center because there's an even number of pages on this row. So maybe I'll go 12 to 13. Awesome, everything is lining up so nicely. I don't even have to make an adjustment on this row. What? That's amazing. Here's 14. Okay, I have to make a slight adjustment on 14. So I think I'm going to leave 14 there, and I'm going to swing out 9. I mean, ever so slightly, like watch. So a little off center, centered. It was, I mean, barely a smidge, but it made all the difference. And the reason it was able to do that, swing out, is because of these hinges, because it's not over taped. It's just a little bit taped. Okay. So now that we have all of our triangles connected and all of our pages taped together, now we can go through and do a little bit extra taping. If you want to, you can use packing tape at this point. And the only reason really to use packing tape is just to kind of keep this pattern intact. Like maybe you want to roll it up and store it. The packing tape will help it just be a little bit sturdier while you handle it over and over again. But for the sake of the video, I'm just going to use my Scotch tape, and you can too. For a lot of my patterns, I just use Scotch tape, but maybe you have more packing tape than Scotch tape, that's fine. But at this point, I'm going to tape all of my 4 corners just to anchor those. So let's take a minute to do all of that. And it's just a little piece of tape, what, like a little over an inch, maybe an inch. Thanks. I forgot to say, you should probably be doing this on a large work surface like a floor or a dining table or your work table if you've got one. That's cool. There were only 4 corners. Cool. Okay. Next, I'm going to tape anywhere paper is connected, but I have pattern lines crossing over that paper connection. Because if I cut my size 12, well, now all of a sudden the edge of my pattern isn't taped down. So if you already know your size, you can place a tape that goes across your pattern line, your size line, I should say. So I'm going to place a piece of tape here at this paper connection, crossing over size 12. So when I cut that off, it stays connected. Same over here. Right, paper is connected. Here's size 12. Let's keep going with this. So here's the armhole. I'll just put a piece of tape over all of them. Here's coming down for our neckline. And then this line right down here, for the sorbetto, all of the sizes come to meet at center back, because this gets placed on the fold. So I'll place, I probably don't need that big of a piece of tape. I'll place one right here because I'm going to cut right down there. I want all of my pages to stay together. And then across the bottom too. Place one right here as well. And if you want to place anything in between there, like something here, you know, in between, just to make it a little bit sturdy, you can. You can also take your packing tape and just go whoop, right down that way, right across there. If you want it extra sturdy, you can tape the back. So let's just take a minute to finish taping across our pattern lines. So at this point, I'm going to switch the camera so that we can look at this paper as a whole. So after taping, we have a large sheet with all of our pattern pieces on it. This is actually pretty small compared to some others that I've made. It could be like the size of your whole dining table, depending on what you're making. And you can see, like, when you look at the back, right, I didn't tape the back together. So there's like these little flaps that, you know, if I'm concerned about it, I can tape them down too, that's fine. And at this point, you kind of have two options what to do with this pattern sheet. You can either highlight your size on this pattern, which I think everybody should do at this point though. Highlight your size and then just cut it out from this master copy. Use these pages, these papers as your pattern, and then that's what you keep forever. Or if you're like me, my size fluctuates a lot from year to year. It's kind of nice to just keep this sheet intact and treat it as like a master copy. So if my size changes from the top that I'm going to make today, I have all of my other sizes, so I can just make new pattern pieces. To make pattern pieces, you'll highlight your size, and then you can either place Easy Pattern paper by Pellon over top. It's transparent. It feels like a fabric. It's basically like fabric tracing paper. You would place Easy Pattern over top of your master copy, and you would trace the size you highlighted onto this and then cut out the pattern pieces from your Easy Pattern paper. Or you can use tracing paper. I have a whole roll of tracing paper because I do a lot of these. Basically the same idea, right? Place the tracing paper over the master copy, trace your size, cut out that pattern from the tracing paper, and then, you know, mark it, right? Put all of your notches on it, put the size on it, seam allowance, grain line, right? Cut, unfold, all those details that the master copy pattern will tell you. And then that way, you know, you've got this pattern in that size 12, let's say, but then you still have your master copy intact. If you tape it up real good, you can roll it up and you can store it in your closet, and then you have it forever. And if your size changes, you don't have to reprint this. You've already got it. You just need to retrace a new size. So you kind of have two options. Cut it right out from this, or trace your size and keep this master copy intact. Either way, whatever you decide, let's go ahead and talk about finding your size, and then highlighting your size. So I'm going to transfer the camera back to overhead my table. All right, so every pattern, master copy, pattern sheet, whatever you want to call this, is going to have a key. And on that key, it's going to tell you which lines are for which size. So when you look at this pattern, there are all these lines going in all different directions. Yes, there are numbers. Sometimes you can lose your way. So I like to just highlight the size. That way too, if I'm using this as a master copy, I'll always know that size 12 is highlighted in pink. So if my size changes, I can use blue to highlight size 14, yellow to do 10. You get the idea. So looking at size 12, it's the long dashed lines, because there's also short dashed lines, right? There's like really long with a dot in the middle. So long dashed lines. So when I'm going around and highlighting my pattern, and I really do recommend that you do this because sometimes there are areas where things get confusing. Like for example, this dart, where does size 12 go? Well, like when you're tracing it or cutting it out, if you have it highlighted already, if you do this part slowly and take your time, you can cut or trace more confidently. So let's just start right here. I'll start at the center back. I do see a size 12, so I'll just start highlighting there. And it's also my long dashed line, so I can confirm that is 12. And I just want to make sure I'm in frame, cutting across the shoulder, in frame. Okay, let's do our armhole. This part does not have to be neat, just as long as you are highlighting where your scissors will go or where your pencil will go if you decide to trace. We'll come down and do our side seam. Notice I went right past the notch, so I'm just going to give that a little highlight so that when I'm cutting or tracing, I remember to include that. And then the hem here is like, they all come to meet at the same point, but they're ever so slightly different. There's really no need to be precise there. I mean, that's like a 70th of an inch. It's really not a huge deal. Other things that I like to do before moving on. First, let's check that we've got all of our notches, which that was the only one over there. You also kind of want to look for like circles or something for like a pocket placement, which there isn't anything here. For this pattern, it gets placed on the fold, so I would give that a highlight. And then I also like to highlight what I'm supposed to cut with this pattern. So it says main fabric, cut 1 on fold. You can also highlight back, but it's usually got like a big B or something there to tell you what it is. You can do back. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to speed up the video and I'm going to do the other pattern piece. And then I'll meet you on the other side. So I'm going to stop the video here because the next step is up to you. Are you going to cut out your pattern piece from this paper in your size and then use that as your pattern and then recycle the rest of the paper? Or are you going to treat this as a master copy? Maybe tape it up a little bit better with packing tape and then use tracing paper or pattern paper to trace the size that you're using right now, and then keep this intact as a master copy. Just a reminder, if you're tracing, get all of the information so that that pattern piece is a real pattern piece and it has everything you need, so that if you make this again in a year, you don't have to take this out, you have all the information. So you'll probably want to include seam allowance, which is not on the pattern. Sometimes it is, but you might be able to, you might find that only in the sewing instructions, but just like write it on there, it's good. Make sure you have all of your notches, your grain lines. For the Sorbetto tank, there's a pleat in the front, so you're gonna wanna mark all of the lines for doing the pleat. Make sure you mark your darts. Look for, like little circles, because it's telling you like pocket placement and stuff like that. Just be really, really precise. Make sure you also label what it's called. Label if it's the front or the back, if it's the sleeve or a pocket, right? If it's facing, stuff like that. Write the size on it too, so that you know in the future. The cutting instructions, like cut 1 on fold, cut 2 mirrored, and cut 2 in interfacing, right? Maybe you need to know those kinds of informations, just that kind of information. Just include everything on your traced pattern piece because you won't have the master copy every time. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope it was really helpful and informative. I hope it gave you some good tips, especially with the Scotch tape, my best friend. Yeah, happy making and good luck with all of your printed home patterns. Bye, friends.